This week we'll continue to build your managerial skill set by providing you with a strong background in planning and running effective meetings. We will talk about the various types of meetings, what to expect, how to prepare for them, and how to manage a meeting effectively, including how to deal with disruptive participants. Then we'll move on to cover another important skill that you will need: report writing. As managers and leaders in healthcare, you'll find that your schedule will include more and more meetings: staff meetings, town hall meetings, stakeholder meetings, briefing meetings, and more. What are meetings good for? Well, they're good to pool information, solicit feedback, clarify policy, seek consensus, and solve problems. They're also golden opportunities to demonstrate your leadership. Meetings, however, are almost universally disliked. We've heard of terms death by meeting, but meetings aren't going away anytime soon in our world of super-connected, team-based work. So our job as leaders should be to make them more efficient, to make them satisfying and productive. Remember that meetings are a prime opportunity to develop staff and are career critical. It's where judgments are formed. So they're also an excellent way for you to show off your healthcare administration learnings as well. So let's talk about a few meeting tips. First, the meeting needs to be necessary. Is there a sense of urgency about the topic that you'd like to meet about? There needs to be a two-way flow of information. If you simply want to advise people of something, it might be better to find another way to do that. Think about the lost productivity of the people who are in the room. Is it a good use of resources? Everyone typically wants to be involved in meetings, but only invite needed participants, people who can and who have the information necessary for decisions to be made. Those who are responsible for implementing the decision and representatives of those who may benefit should also be in attendance. 3M studies indicate that for decision-making meetings, there should be no more than 5 people. This doesn't mean that there's no need to consult with others prior to the session or to communicate afterwards, though. It's just a lot easier to come to a consensus with fewer folks at the table. But not all meetings are equal, so let's have a look at the different types of meetings. There are, in fact, several types, all of which are outlined well in the Effective Healthcare Supervisor reading. They include information meetings. These meetings are held largely for the transfer of information. The leader may do all or most of the talking in this form of meeting, although there may be questions asked and discussion for the sake of clarification. The next type is the discussion meeting. The objective here is to come to an agreement on something through the exchange of ideas, information, and opinions. The essence of this meeting is the exchange or interaction between all of the participants. And then there's the directed discussion meeting. Have you ever been to a meeting where the outcome seemed like it was perhaps a foregone conclusion? Well, that's an official type of meeting. The directed discussion meeting is where the conclusion has already been determined, but it isn't simply being relayed to the participants. Instead, the leader tries to get acceptance for the solution. It's a lot like a sales pitch. And then we come to the problem-solving discussion. This is where there's an issue that needs to be addressed by a group of people. An exploratory discussion meeting is meant to gain information from participants that can be later used to base a decision upon. The idea is to collect information for use by others. Focus groups can easily fall into this type of meeting. So how do we make sure that we provide the perfect meeting? There's some great tips in our text on pages 30 to 33 and also in the Effective Healthcare Supervisor reading. Once you've determined what type of meeting is needed and set some goals, you're ready to begin planning your session. But how do you do that? Start with putting together a well-structured agenda. There's some great tips in the readings and lots of fantastic resources online. An important thing to remember is that if you're holding a meeting, you want to send the agenda out at least a day in advance. listing the topics to be discussed, and make sure you attach anything that requires participants to read prior to the session. If your meeting involves people outside of your organization, you should send out your agenda even earlier. Most boards of directors have their agenda packages a full week before the meeting. A key is to ensure clarity and focus. This is where you're setting expectations for your group. Date, time, place, start and finish times, a brief description of topics, in the order of priority with the lead's name, an allotment of time for each item, and pre-meeting expectations should all be included. Start on time and begin with a 3 to 5 minute introduction that outlines the goal and length of the meeting, the background of topics or problems, possible solutions or constraints, the tentative agenda, and the ground rules to be followed. Don't recap for those who show up late. After the introductory statements, as the meeting leader, you should say very little, rather acting as a talk show type of host, to ensure that the meeting stays on topic and that everyone gets some airtime. You might want to consider building a parking lot for items that are off topic to be discussed at a later time. Remember that conflict is natural and can be very productive in organizations, but it can also cause awkwardness in meetings. As the leader of a session where two people are in conflict, it's recommended that you let them both state their case, and then the group can ask questions and offer comments. If the behavior is dysfunctional, the leader needs to handle the participants tactfully. Lay down the rules in an opening statement. Perhaps seat the dysfunctional person next to the leader and not in the power position at the end of the table or directly across from the speaker. Avoid eye contact with them to discourage them from speaking. Assign them with tasks such as group recorder, or ask them to speak in a specific order. Monopolizers of time need to be interrupted, and non-talkers need to be encouraged. At the end of your meeting, at the end of the agreed time for your meeting, I should say, or earlier, summarize what the meeting accomplishments have been and review the action items. Remind the participants of their tasks. You want everyone leaving the room with a clear perspective on what was decided. If minutes were taken, they should be distributed within 48 hours. It's the role of the leader to ensure what was decided at the meeting is accomplished, and thus may need to make some follow-up calls.